Okay, in order to create your own models for the object sequencer add-in, you basically need to do two things. You need to create your own model or download a model that you want to use, and then you need to program a plugin for the add-in sequencer. So today we're going to start by creating a simple 3D model. It's just going to be a simple spotlight. We are going to use Blender in order to create this. You can use any 3D modeling tool you'd like, but you need to be able to export it to XAML. So let's go ahead and get started with creating our model. This isn't going to be a tutorial on how to use Blender. I am not very good at it. I am not very artistic to start off with, so basically I'm just going to run through it. You'll see me fumble around a couple times, but we'll do the best that we can. So first thing you need to do is go out on the web and go to blender.org and download Blender. Now, the newer versions of Blender do not have a XAML exporter, so we have to download an older version that we can get one for. So just click on download, go to older versions, follow this link, and then if you scroll down, we want to download and install Blender 2.48. So once you have this all set up, we need to go out and get our exporter script. If you could just go to Google and do a search for Blender XAML export, this top link will take you to where we need to get. You just download the script and then follow these instructions. It basically just tells you to copy the script under the Blender scripts folder. So once you go ahead and do that, we have everything we need to get started. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, like I said, I am not very good at Blender, but and this isn't a tutorial on using Blender. But I figured I'd run through just making a quick model for you. I will explain all the keystrokes I'm doing in order to do what I'm doing. But if you want to learn really how to use Blender, you need to go out on the web. There's plenty of instructions, and people are doing some pretty amazing stuff with it. So inside Blender, we are going to start by hitting the delete key. It starts you off with this cube, but we're going to use cylinders in this. So hit the delete key and delete that object. And then go ahead, add a mesh. We're going to add a cylinder. Click OK. Okay. Right now, we are in, I believe, top view. So if you hit the 1 on the keypad, it will take you to front view. If you hit the 3 on the keypad, it'll take you to side view. We kind of want side view here, and we want this cylinder, instead of facing up, down, we want it to be facing left, right. So if you hit the R key, that means rotate. What you can do is you can hit the R and then the Y, which means rotate around the, or I'm sorry, we want to rotate around the x-axis. So it's going to be R, X, and then just type 90, so it'll go 90 degrees. I accidentally switched views there. So you hit R, then X, and then 90, and then enter. So that'll move it so that it's horizontal exactly. Now, one thing I want to note is this is the 0 axis. This is important because when we rotate everything in our plugin for the object sequencer, it's easiest for us if we're rotating around the 0 axis. We don't have to worry about exactly where we're rotating it around. So we're going to keep that there. So this will end up being, this is highlighted right now. You can tell by the little pinkish color highlight. Let's go ahead and name this. This is going to be our spotlight, not sport, spot. Click enter. So it helps us down the road if we name these so we know exactly what we want. So we're going to create now. We have our little spotlight here. It's nice and simple. It's just a cylinder. We're going to create a beam that's going to go off to the right here. So in order to do this, this is the y-axis here. What we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this, and we're going to drag it along the y-axis. So to do that, you hit Shift D and then Y. So now we can move this along the y-axis. Click the mouse button when you're ready. So let's shrink this down a little bit. You'll see why in a second. So hit the S for scale, and then we'll just shrink it down a little bit. Okay, and then let's just drag it into here. So what we want to do is grab and hit the Y button, so we can drag it along the y-axis. So it's G, Y, and then we drag it so that it's touching. Okay, so now we have the basics, the majority of what we're doing. Let's go ahead and give this a name. Let's call this beam. Enter. Okay, right now we're in object mode, so everything we do basically affects the entire object. And if you hit the middle mouse button, you can kind of rotate around to where you want to be. So if you rotate to about somewhere on this angle, and then go to edit mode. We're actually going to edit the grid here. What we want to accomplish is we want to get this beam to stretch out longer, and then we're going to have it flare out. So you can see now the entire thing is highlighted. We don't want that, so just click the A button. That'll deselect everything. And then what we want to do is we want to select everything on the end. So the easiest way for us to do that, if you hit S for select and then B for box, it'll allow us to create a box, hold down the mouse button, drag it around, and we're just highlighting everything on this end face here. So now you can just click this green button and drag it out to however long you want the beam to be. Okay, that looks good enough for me. And then if you hit the S button, you can flare this out. I kind of ran out of space, so let's stop it there and then select it again, and we'll flare it out more. So there you go. So we're good in there. Let's go back to object mode so we don't accidentally move that. And then that's basically our spotlight. Kind of simple enough. Now let's color this beam. This is the part I kind of forget exactly where you do it. So let's poke around a little bit. I think this one, yeah, if you hit this little shading button, you can add a new material. Let's call this material beam color. Hit enter. And let's give it a yellowish color. Kind of click around until you find something you like. Good enough. You can play around and get that however you'd like. So let's select the our actual spotlight. Let's give that a new color. Let's kind of make that a grayish color. Select that, hit enter. Okay, so now we have basically our entire spotlight. Do yourself a favor and save often. I already have a spotlight saved, but I'm going to save over top of it. If you're like me, you'll have a lot of problems kind of figuring this stuff out. So it's best if you save often. So hit the 1 key. This right now we are in front view. This is our camera. So it's kind of offset, which we really don't want. We kind of want the camera looking from, in fact, if you render it, you'll see that it's coming in from a side view. If that's what you want, that's great, but I generally found it's easier to have the camera behind the object, so you're viewing it straight on. So in order to do that, I have a little cheat sheet somewhere. But if you click the 1 to get in the front view, and then press the Control, Alt and then the 0 button on your keypad, that will move the camera to the current view. So since we were in front view, the camera now is in front view. So now if you render it, you'll see we are looking at it from straight behind. And you'll see our lighting kind of stinks here. So let's add a couple more lights. These little guys are your lights. If you right click to select it, you can hit the Shift D to duplicate it, and let's hit the X to move it along the X axis. And let's move it to about there. And let's hit the Shift D again and move it along the Z axis. We'll put one down here, and then Shift D again and move it along the X axis. So we'll move it to about here. So now we should have a pretty well lit object. Yeah, it's probably too lit, but it's okay. It'll serve our purpose. So basically now we have just about everything we need, but there is something we definitely have to be aware of. If we rotate around here, what Blender does when you move everything, it doesn't actually move the points. What it does is it creates a transform. If we leave it as it is, it's going to be an absolute major headache for us when we go ahead and try and work with it in C#. So what you want to do is you want to highlight the object. You can go take a look at the transform properties. You'll see, actually this seems like it is, see how this rotation X is 90 and these numbers can be weird. What we want to do is on this object we want to apply the scale and rotation data. Once we do that, you'll see these go to zeros, which means it actually moves all the points it needs. So when we deal with it in C#, it's the points are exactly where we need them. They're not transformed to move the object. So we want to do that for both the spotlight and also the beam. You'll see this has some weird numbers in here. We want to apply all those to the beam. So go ahead and click on that. That should clear. That's okay. But I think it's these numbers and these numbers that we are. I usually do it like 2 or 3 times just to make sure. But go ahead. Let's save that again. Okay. So now we have our object. Let's take a view of it real quick. Alright, looks good to me. Good enough anyway. So now we have it saved in Blender. What we need to do is we need to export this whole thing to XAML. One thing to note, the exporter will only export what you have selected. So we want to select absolutely everything. So if you hit the A key, it's going to deselect what's selected. If you hit it again, it selects absolutely everything. So once everything is selected, go ahead, click the file, go down to export, and down here is the XAML exporter. And it'll ask you where you want to save it. I already have one made, but just go ahead and give it a name and export. Okay, and we're done with our model. You can go ahead and close out of Blender, and now that we have our model, we can, in the next part, we'll start making our plugin, and then we'll bring that into our plugin. So until then, good luck with Blender.